That is correct.
right? On
Hello.
YouTube, another fellow African that is doing the necessary work on We Charge Colonialism on YouTube.
Wow.
And he is in community with us, and we were speaking about you coming in to speak about this subject, and he mentioned that in some work that he was doing, he um has done a little research on GMOs. So I'll let Brother Ikemba speak to you, Chioma. Go ahead,
Okay.
Kemba.
Okay, yes. So thank you for having me. Appreciate you bringing me onto this platform. Yes, conversation that we had in regards to my research on GMOs. It was actually for a paper in my graduate program, and I was looking at the history of GMOs, and I came across a case. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jacobarty or Jacobarty versus Diamond case, and that was in the 70s. And in this case, this is where the problem really started, because in this case, they took it to the Supreme Court. They basically genetically modified this organism in the lab, and they wanted to patent it, but the patent office wouldn't patent it because the patent guidelines said you cannot patent life. But they took it to the Supreme Court, and the short story of the long story is that the Supreme Court, higher court, sided with Jacobarty and said that you're able to patent life as long as it's not a newborn baby. And so this was in the 70s, 79, I think the case concluded. But then in the 80s and particularly in the 90s, this is where the GMOs like really exploded and became $1 billion business. Now, so like to my question though, with the GMOs, I really don't, I might be alone in this, but I don't see the issue with just the GMOs by itself. For me, it's the commercialization, it's capitalism. Because if you look at the history, human beings always artificially select, not always, but 10,000 maybe years ago, we was artificially selecting plants and foods. And a lot of the foods that, not a lot, but bananas, watermelons, there's some fruits and vegetables that we selected and breeded a certain way. And it looks a lot different than it did maybe 200, 300 years ago. But for me, it's the commercialization. It's the capitalism with the advent of these genetically modified organisms. That now, what's going to happen is these companies, they don't care how healthy these foods are. And so, they could be feeding us poison as long as, well, they are feeding us poison, right? As long as they're making billions of dollars, because this is $1 billion, probably $1 trillion business. So how do we reverse this? What are some solutions? I know y'all was addressing a lot of these things, but if you was to talk to people and like some practical things that we can do, because with capitalism, it seems like there's really no reverse unless we do something about capitalism.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll let sister unless you're not done with the question, Ikemba.
Well, that's really it. Like, what are some practical things that we can do within the social system to kind of like
so we'll have Sister Chioma answer, and we need to let her go because she has a family to care for, and this is the life we live, right? We have different things happening in our lives. So we thank you very much for being with us, Chioma. We thank you very much for the work you're doing. We will continue this work together. But as you quickly answer that, and then once she does and we let her go back to be with her family, then we can continue the conversation amongst ourselves. Stay with us, Ikemba. Yes, go ahead.
And really, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this platform. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you, Brother Ikemba. I see what you're saying, like you don't really see an issue with the GMOs. The trouble with the GMOs, as Dr. Mokaya explained to us, is it's basically a Frankenstein seed. They have modified the nature of the seed and therefore modified the nature of the plant. So it is a new thing entirely. It's not like with hybridization, which you were describing, where people, select for certain features, like how I think it was the Dutch who selected for the color orange in carrots, or how slowly from wild mustard you eventually get cauliflower and broccoli and curly kales or whatever, which are strange enough in themselves because I don't know what you're getting. But GMOs is the DNA of the thing that actually has been affected, and it is so that it can withstand poison. So it can be bathed in poison. Every other plant around it will die, and the thing is like, yo, bring it on, bring some more, and then it keeps going, which is quite bizarre. So whatever you're putting in you, they will say very conveniently, there are no scientific
Side
reports
effects.
which can address the issue of what
Eat
side
all the
effects
germs you want.
in your body. It's so convenient. So you're like, okay, I can't really get an answer in terms of how it's going to affect my health from a scientific point of view. Now, because that's another structure that society has accepted, legality and then science. They hide behind it as conveniently as they can. But what can we do? If they are trying to nudge people in a specific direction, everyone must, what we always encourage people to do at Mzingi Africa is just stop first and understand what's going on. Don't rush, with the flow or agree for them to threaten you or intimidate you into making a choice now by force. You have to decide. Understand why people are being driven in a specific direction. What exactly is the end result of that? What are the options that are available to you? So there are people who start community gardens. I think in the US, I see an increase of community gardens where people are growing things that they know are beneficial to them. And they're sharing these or selling these in areas so that people are able to actually boost their health. We are encouraging people to truly find ways to save as much of their indigenous seeds as they can.
Yes, please.
In Africa, in the Caribbean, wherever else you can find heirloom seeds, indigenous seeds, nothing hybrid. Hybrid cannot really support you beyond one season, and you don't really know what else is up with them. But whatever was original to the land, because it can still be found somewhere, I'm completely convinced. My husband tells me about plants in Nigeria, and I'm like, what is that? He's like, how is it not in Kenya? I said, I don't know. Bring it here. We'll plant it. Let it proliferate. It's fine. But save the seeds. Save them, save them, save them. That's the first priority. Keep them somewhere safe. Find out what it takes to preserve a seed. You know how they've got that seed bank in, what's that cold place? Whatever that cold place.
Ireland.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, Iceland. Right. So they've got their seed bank. Find out what it takes to preserve seeds so that it remains in optimal state so that it can be replanted. When you travel to different parts of the world, see if you can find seed there and harness it. Find networks of people, encourage them to save seed. When possible, start to exchange. And this conversation does not only have to take place among Africans.
Yes.
There are communities in South America who are also very, very conscious of the land and conscious of its value. There are Native Americans who are conscious of the land, conscious of seed, and conscious of value. People who respect life. Those are the people who you need to network with. You'll find them anywhere from Japan to, where is that called? Alaska. You will find them. Exchange seed. We need to diversify plant life across the world again, because it has been just decimated unnecessarily by all sorts of irresponsible lifestyles. So plant the seed. If they're insisting that the only thing that you can buy if you want a wheat product is something that has been baked in glyphosate, change your diet.
Okay.
You don't have to buy what they're selling you.
Sister, I was going to echo that as well. I was going to jump on the brother's question and say maybe one of the solutions could be boycotts as well. Boycott certain foods.
Absolutely.
Although then you have to be looking behind your back all the time if you start that movement. But I think it's critical.
Because you can do a silent boycott. Not the ones people like to go to the streets and put up placards and stuff like that. And that's useful for what it's useful for. But you can also mobilize communities quietly.
Yes.
And just suddenly no one is buying white bread, brown bread, because they know where it came from. At least like in the US, you seem to have ways to trace where the food was grown and how it was grown. Those things, use them now to your advantage. Don't buy that bread. Right. Buy the one that you know is safer, or figure out how to make it yourself.
Make your bread.
If you can source the grain, you don't have to use wheat. If that one has been glyphosated to death, look for buckwheat. or some other thing that you can use to make bread. They can even make millet bread. Use teff, make flatbreads. If you can, avoid what they're trying to feed you. Don't use canola oil, don't use soy products, because those ones, you know, they've GMO'd them to the hilt. So stay away from that. If you really like soy, try and figure out where you can get heirloom seeds and then grow your own and start to, you know, create your products from that, if it really is beneficial to your health. The type of oils that you use, you have to be careful about them. Do you even have to use oil in your cooking? You don't. There are many ways in which you can produce healthy, delicious food without using their oils. So protect yourself, protect your family as much as possible. Because there's so many things that are contaminated, you don't know what's contaminated with what. But whatever you have control of, take control of and manage to the greatest extent possible. And I'm not talking about being paranoid. Yeah. I'm talking about wisdom. I'm talking about discernment. I'm talking about being prudent in the steps that you take. It's just media will bring up something and they'll try and drive you in some kind of frenzied state. Say, fine, if Ukraine cannot export wheat again, we don't have to eat wheat. It's not dead.
I'm glad you mentioned that one.
You know, right? It's like sweet potato is food. Thank you. Cassava is food. Yam is food.
And arrowroots. I miss those.
Arrowroot is food. So those are some of the things that I would say. And then just talk about these things. And I'm serious about not necessarily going loud, because sometimes when you go loud, people kind of try to mess it up.
Yes.
Yeah. So
can you repeat that part, please, again? The loud part.
This is not necessary, you know.
My brothers
always come for me, but go ahead.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
You have to go. Tell us your contact. Listeners need to know how to get in touch with you.
Share information about Mzingi that you would like our audience to know, please, quickly, as you head out. You have a campaign that you're running with
Mchanga. We have a crowdfunding.
And what is that link? I can quickly type it in here.
Do you have? I think we sent it to you, but
it is in
the flyers. We'll share it with them. We'll share it with them.
Okay, I will also ask Samuel to send it as well as I
once you step away, Samuel can get on the chat and just put it in the chat right now with the audience that we have here. Asante.
Yeah, because how we started Mzingi was just on the basis of love. We have to tell as many people as much truth as possible, as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. It did not depend on resources. Resources we didn't have. At times, there was no food, but the magazine had to go out. A video had to be done. And we're like, you know what? If we don't tell people, then we die with this information. What use was the life that we had?
Correct.
So it takes that level of sacrifice. Eventually, you know, some people would be like, hey, you guys, man, how can we support you? And we got some help along the way. It hasn't been easy, but let me tell you something. To be able to sleep peacefully is better.
Exactly.
I'm done.
Thank you so much.
Continue to live in you.
Yes. Looking forward to working with you some more.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a good evening. Samuel, get in that chat and put that link in there, please. Yeah. That was great. It was great to have
if it's anything we learn from that, your food should not be fast.
Listen,
there you go.
Take your time with your food. Ikemba, did you have any other questions now with my brothers Ali Mahdi and Adesoji with us? Did you, first of all, did our sister answer your question? Let's get to that first.
Yes.
Kabisa,
yes,
look at that. So this, I want to mention this. First of all, I love your t-shirt. Uhuru, all the way, freedom, liberation for all people. But Ikemba is a brother in the United States, a descendant of enslaved Africans who is going back to his roots and learning his African language. So you'll hear him, he's saying ndio because he's learning Kiswahili. And I encourage all Africans to learn your African languages. These are important.
And I nominate Sister Nduku as an instructor.
I am an instructor. You can find me on Clubhouse. Those of you who know Clubhouse, you can find me on Nubia. You can find me wherever I am. You can find me on Kumbukeni. at kumbukeni1@gmail.com. Send us an email if you need to learn Kiswahili. We will provide the lessons. And Yoruba. I'm going to throw my brother under the bus, Brother Adesoji. But Ikemba, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just I do. I want to hear your thoughts, because I definitely agree with the sister and her take on the GMOs and it being different. I guess like what I'm trying to argue, even if it's not GMO, but just like we have the capability of creating something, right, to make sure that we're able to feed the people sufficiently. I mean, if we could do that organically too, and I'm not saying like replace that either, but I'm looking for something where we have a system, a universal system, a global system where all people have access to food. And so making this transition where people are not really like reliant upon having to have resources to pay for food. Like this is a human right, whatever that may be. And we can't have anything, of course, that's going to be detrimental to humankind. That's what I think like capitalism and, you know, these GMOs, this is the problem, because they'll pump out poison, right? But that's all. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, if you have any thoughts. That's it.
I mean, for me, the one lesson I will go to is, if you look at a country like Burkina Faso, when Thomas Sankara arrived on the scene in 1983, there were land tenure rights. Not that the land was not tenable, not that you can't plant on the land, but you know, you had to pay to a feudal lord the access to the land. The first thing he did was nationalize the land. And then once the land was nationalized, he created, dams, little dams, water, generate access to water. With that, he told people to get on with it. So people actually normally would know what to plant in a certain part of the country, and they did. And the country went from being food dependent to being food sufficient in 4 years. In 4 years. That's a place where they know when the rains are coming. There's a desert just up north. So imagine in a place like Nigeria that has abundant land, place like and people are allowed to access to the land and they're allowed to get on with it. Imagine what is possible. It's not that they can't. It's not that the systems are not there. It's just that, just like the good sister was saying earlier, people just come in between, trying to interpret where there is no interpretation needed. I mean, the idea that certain seeds are better than, listen, you don't know about the land than the farmer who has been farming that land for God knows how long.
Exactly.
You don't.
So,
you don't.
Brother Adesoji, what I'm hearing you say is leave Africans to be. Leave them alone. Let them decide what their food supply is going to look like, right? We are at the end of our session today. Thank you so much, Brother.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly to that. Just give me 30 seconds.
Yes.
What the brother is really saying is that under capitalism, we cannot really tackle these issues. And I agree with him. We can't tackle it overnight the way Sankara did in Burkina Faso. But I think we can start giving people their independence slowly without overselling revolution and make them more revolutionary without necessarily telling them they're being revolutionary. So if we can show them why GMOs are bad, why indigenous seeds are good, they take agency over their food production. That is a very revolutionary act. As the sister was saying, some things we don't need to do too publicly. And then at some point, when the people are ready, then maybe we can spark that type of Sankara type revolution.
Yes.
I agree with the brother. Right now, we are beholden under this vicious capitalistic system enforced by the World Bank, the IMF, and the World Trade Organization. So if we can't clash with them head on, at least let's start teaching people revolutionary skills without necessarily telling them this is a revolution. That's how I would respond to your question.
Go ahead.
Can I just quickly leave with what Brother Alimadi just said there just chimes well with what Che Guevara would say. You don't practice revolution until everyone almost everyone is ready. You don't put your head above the parapet, otherwise it will be shot off.
Yeah. And how can we get ready, Brother Adesoji bringing up Che Guevara? Listen, y'all. This is a different ball game. So if you thought you were coming to play baseball or tennis, we are on a different ball game.
Wait, but Fidel like baseball. You forget.
Yep.
Fidel love baseball.
Oops. My thing is, so now what we are saying as far as food goes is, if you're that farmer in Africa, continue saving that seed. If you're that farmer in Africa, share with your fellow farmers this seed. Grow your crops. Do not buy this new seed that is being sold to you. If you're a person like ourselves, maybe don't go to McDonald's as often. Don't get sold the okidok of the fast food. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, my brothers, for always being in conversation with me. I always enjoy it. Thank you, Ikemba, for joining us for the question. We wish you all the best. Again, Ikemba on YouTube, you can find him at We Charge Colonialism. Ikemba, you can put your link in the chat when you get off.
Kwaheri Sikunjema. The brother joins us again,
Yes, and hopefully you join us again. I'm going to let you go so that you can quickly put that in the chat while we're still here. And then quickly, I am going to, or rather, Kumbukeni, sorry. We are a community, right? We encourage you, please, to support us. You can join us as a Patreon at patreon.com/Kumbukeni, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@Kumbukeni1.
And remember to click the like button.
Yes, please like and subscribe. We are like on the videos, yes, and subscribe, please. And we have a goal this month to hit 1,000 subscribers. If you can please help us get to that number, that will help us continue doing this work. That will give us more time to get into these books where our ancestors have put the information and where people who've done the research have put the information so that we can share it with you all. Brothers, anything as we say Kwaheri?
Asanteni sana. May the spirit of Sankara live within all of us.
As like Sankara would say, you are what you eat. So be careful what you
We're celebrating Sankara today as we speak about our food safety. Kwaherini. Asante sana, everyone.
Okay.